Welcome back. This is Frank DeMora, the author of The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, and you're at the End Times Research Ministry. Welcome to my YouTube. Thank you for allowing me to be able to connect the dots between Bible prophecy and the current events for you. And I'm praying that if you just found my website here, my YouTube channel, that you would go over to my website, which is www.endtimesresearchministry.com, and take advantage of my book for free today. You'll see the link there. Click the link. It'll download immediately for you. Now, if you are new, what I do is I'll give you the scripture, and then I'm going to show you the connection between the warning of the Lord and what's actually going on currently. And it is my hope that if you just get a few of these prophecies today, that you will take the time to go to my website and read the material in that book. There's a lot of material in the book, documentations, facts, and evidence showing you that Jesus is the truth. And the things that he told us are already here, and the ones that haven't been fulfilled yet completely, we're on the path to seeing those prophecies fulfilled. So let's go right into the first section. So let's look at what God told the prophet Zechariah in chapter 12, verse 3, in considering what he says about Israel and about Jerusalem. It says this, "And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." So, knowing the scripture, if somebody says the United States will never break off from Israel, I would say they're 100% wrong, based on the word of the Lord, because God is always right. His prophecies always come to pass. And if he says in the scripture, all the people are going to come against Israel, you know that that's what's going to happen. And if you don't believe it, just stand by and you will see it unfold. Now, in this scripture, it talks about the burden themselves over Jerusalem. And if you're unaware of it, Jerusalem has, in fact, become the burdensome stone for most of the nations around the world. You could see this in the failing peace process, where Jerusalem is the major obstacle stopping the peace, along with construction on land that the Israelis are building, that the PLO considers their own land. Now, where does Barack Hussein Obama, the leader of the United States, fall in this? Considering the fact that Zechariah tells us anybody who messes around with Jerusalem this way, or the Jewish people in this way, that will be cut into pieces, what about Barack Hussein Obama? Well, it's obvious if you've been here at my site or my YouTube channel or my live presentation that Barack Obama does have Israel's back, but it's not in the sense that most people think. And as you can see from the photo here, I'm showing the people that yes, Barack Obama has the back of Israel, but it's got a dagger about 9 inches long in it. And ever since the president was elected, we've seen the incidences of Barack Hussein Obama disintegrating the relationship that so many presidents before him have had between Israel and the United States. But it all stands to reason, because people who are elected into office or placed into office, we know that those people were put there by God to do whatever God wants them to carry out. And in this case, it certainly looks like Barack Hussein Obama was placed in office to help fulfill Zechariah 12:3. No other president has destroyed the relationship so fast between Israel and the United States than this president. Now, along with Zechariah 12:3, you need to understand, where is it going to lead? If the Lord says he's going to cut everybody into pieces, well, one of the places that we know that it's going to lead, and of course this is going to have a major impact what happens to Israel, is the Ezekiel chapter 38 war that we see in the Old Testament. And according to Ezekiel chapter 38, the Russians, as you see at the top here, there's an old map and it has the old names from the Old Testament, if you will, but we know Gog, Magog, the names of Ezekiel 38 is really Russia. And so we know from God, he told us that the Russians are going to lead an attack against Israel. And who are their allies going to be? Well, for the purpose of this section, Iran. I'm going to use Iran because Iran is one of the nations who are going to unite with the Russians to come down into Israel. And of course, Israel is going to win the war, although Israel won't even fight the war. Now, what we do know from Ezekiel chapter 38 is this. If you've never read the prophecy, you need to understand this, especially if you're Muslim. And then you'll understand who is telling the truth, right? Is it Allah telling the truth, or is it Jehovah, God of the Old Testament, telling the truth? But what we do know is when the Russians come down with predominantly the Islamic nations against Israel, according to Ezekiel chapter 38, God is going to fight that war for Israel. Israel won't fight it. And what we are told that 5/6 of the invading armies from Iran, from Turkey, from Russia, from Libya, and the rest of these nations, 5/6 are going to be destroyed. Now, mathematically, that's about 84% of the invading army are going to be wiped out. So there's going to be a small remnant. 1/6 will be able to go back where they came from. Now, there are a lot of people who want to teach that Ezekiel chapter 38 is the same war as the Battle of Armageddon. And there is definitely distinctions. These are two different wars. One of the ways you can tell how it is different is this. Ezekiel chapter 38 tells us 5/6 or 84% will be killed, and then the 1/6 will be going back to where they came from. Now, that's completely different from the Battle of Armageddon, where we see everyone is going to be destroyed. The birds eat, the captains and the kings, they're going to eat them all. Nobody lives in that battle, and that's the last battle where Jesus Christ comes back. Now, there is complete distinction between 1/6 going back home and living compared to total annihilation of an enemy against God. So that's one way that you can show people that the Ezekiel war is not the Battle of Armageddon. So Iran, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but Iran is a major obstacle right now for Israel's peace and security. And Iran will try to destroy them. They've been talking about destroying, annihilate them for a very, very long time. And I'm going to show you it hasn't stopped. And by the way, in Psalm 83, we even see in that war the Lord warning us that these people, the enemies of Israel, will call and say that they're going to wipe out Israel so that her name is not even mentioned anymore. So when we hear presidents or the supreme leaders from this nation of Iran saying that they're going to destroy Israel, all they're really doing is following what the Lord said that they would do. Now, in closing this one section here, one final note. Because I did say, if you're Muslim, you want to listen to this. If you see this tiny little nation here, just the size of Connecticut, if you will, coming against every one of these nations who are listed, look at how big they are. Massive numbers, probably, I would say 40, 50 million people coming against Israel, and Israel wins that war. How are you going to talk to other people who ask you who is the real God? If Allah is not strong enough to wipe out a size of, if you will, like an ant compared to a giant bear, what makes you think that Allah's the real God? It's a matter of fact that Israel, in 1948, when they were attacked by the Arabs that border their nation, they defeated the enemies. They didn't even have a regular army, and they won. Now this was God, the Jews, their God, Jehovah, fighting against Allah. Who won? Well, everybody knows that Israel did. In 1967, it was the same thing. The Jews, who are being watched over by God, Jehovah God, they went to war against the Jews, the Muslims, obviously. Who won that war? It was Israel. And then again in 1973, the same thing. The Jews against the Muslims. So you have Jehovah again watching over Israel. They win that war. And how any Muslim who will just negate what had happened and say, well, there's flukes. No, I'm sorry. It's not a fluke. God of the Old Testament, Jehovah God, he is the one who defeated the Muslims who have been trying to wipe out the nation of Israel. And it shows and it demonstrates who the real God is. Now, you're going to see another demonstration of that in the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. Another one. When massive numbers come down against Israel, and they are defeated just like they were defeated in the other wars. And this should be a significant sign to any Muslim who believes that their God is the true God. Ask yourself, why is it that constantly war after war after war cannot take out a little speck in the Middle East? It's because God, Jehovah, is the real God. And he is going to do with Israel what he wants to fulfill Bible prophecy. And Satan wants Israel to be destroyed so that the prophecies cannot be completed. So knowing this information, let's go back and take a look at some of the things that I've been telling you about. Now, I've been warning you to watch these things because Israel is going to have to attack Iran to stop their nuclear facility because they're going to be on their own to do it. You can't rely on the United States or anybody else. Here's some of the warnings that I posted in the past. Let me go over to a couple of them. Now, here's one from January the 29th of 2009. I'm going to just scroll down to you'll see it right here covered in the blue. Here are the facts. Israel is running out of time to deal with Iran's surge in obtaining a nuclear bomb. And for the past 2 years, the Israeli officials have warned that they will take out Iran's nuclear site if the UN cannot get them to halt their production. At the same time Israel is warning Iran comes back and says, we will never stop the nuclear program. Let me add these facts. If you are new to my site, you may not know this, and you should. Israel warned Iraq and Syria about their nuclear ambitions just the way they are now warning Iran. And Israel bombed both Iraq and Syria's nuclear site and put an end to their quest for obtaining a nuclear bomb. What would make you think Israel won't carry out their word that they will destroy Iran's site? Now, that was just one of my warnings. And I can't put them all up here for you, but you're going to have the link there and you could read the whole article if you want. Now, in that article, I even gave you a YouTube video to show you what I was saying was the truth, that the Iranians said that they're not going to stop, and it's carried on ever since 2009. So let me show you one of those videos.
Iran's Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki says Tehran will never halt uranium enrichment, even if the West guarantees its need for nuclear fuel. Mottaki made the remarks at a joint press conference with his visiting Venezuelan counterpart. Zhang Rui has more on the story.
Speaking after talks with the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Nicolás Maduro, Mottaki confirmed Iran's intentions to continue its nuclear activities despite international objections. He said that the Western countries are not trustworthy and spoke out about what he saw as the biggest hindrance to Tehran's developing atomic activities.
All right, so you get the gist there. I just wanted to connect the dots for you. Iran said that they're never going to stop. That was 2008, 2009, and all the way up to 2013 to current day. They're saying the exact same thing. Now, I've gone over to the link here with this article. You'll see on November the 20th of 2013, Israel asked for increased sanctions to stop the Iranian nukes. So some things never change, but some things will change instantly. The day is coming where something is going to have to take place. All right, so talks to rein in Iran's nuclear program were resumed today in Geneva as Israel prevailed upon the negotiators to harden their deal to avert war. And that war that I'm talking about could be either the Psalm 83 or the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if Iran is attacked by Israel, we may see that the nations that border Israel may take out revenge and try to take Israel out. Nobody can say for sure how it's going to go down, but we do know Psalm 83 has to be fulfilled, and so also the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. Now, continuing on, it says the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was headed to Moscow to convince the Kremlin that any deal should force Iran to abide by UN Security Council demands. It ends its enrichment in uranium, a process that can create fuel for an atomic bomb. And if they refuse to do so, increase the sanctions, he told the German newspaper Bild on Tuesday. And because the options are not a bad deal or war. There is a third option: keep the pressure up. In fact, increase the pressure. The stakes are high in Geneva. Israel has said a nuclear Iran is a threat to its existence, and it will launch a military strike if necessary to stop it. So there you have it. You'll see again the prelude to a war that is coming. Now, Secretary of State John Kerry says, however, that the deal on the table will calm the Middle East and improve the odds of a better future deal. It's not going to work. And it is obvious to me that John Kerry, who is working with Barack Obama, doesn't have a clue about the future based on what the Lord said. I mean, obviously, if anybody read it, you'd have to come to a conclusion. And that conclusion would be this. Either John Kerry is ignorant of the Bible, like Barack Obama is, or he isn't. He just doesn't care. In either case, it's bad news for the United States. Now, it goes on to say that President Obama on Tuesday asked the U.S. senators to hold off on their intention to propose tougher sanctions. Now, this is, again, the exact opposite of what Israel is saying. So you see the contention that's brewing. You're going to see this later as well. According to the Republican Senator Bob Corker, who attended the White House meeting, Israel says the U.S. is proposing to ease sanctions without getting proper assurances that Iran will end its nuclear program. Croker said that there will not be any sanctions amendments added before Thanksgiving, but that legislators from both parties want to propose them anyway. So, moving on in the article, the top Democratic and Republican representatives in the House Foreign Affairs Committee said Tuesday in a letter to Obama that the deal pursued by Kerry is defective. So I'm glad that there's somebody in the United States government who knows it's not a good deal. Well, we know for a fact that Israel knows it's not a good deal, and we know for a fact that he said that he's going to have to strike at Iran in the near future if somebody doesn't stop it. And obviously, when you're looking at articles like this, you'll see that Barack Hussein Obama has no intentions of stopping Iran's quest to get a nuclear bomb that no doubt that they'll try to use against the nation of Israel. All right, so on to another link just to show you how I'm connecting the dots here. Look at this. I'm going to show you. This is a picture of the Iranian supreme leader. This is the head honcho, the number one guy in Iran. He's the one that tells the Iranians what to do, the spiritual leader, right? He is the man. Now, according to the article, look at the headlines. Khomeini, that's the picture of him down there. The Israeli regime is doomed to failure, annihilation. This is what the Iranians have been saying for a very, very long time. And I'm hoping by now you got that message. Let's look what it says here. It says the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said Iran would not step back from its nuclear rights, and his negotiating team had set limits for talks over Iran's disputed nuclear program. Did I not tell you in 2009 that they would not quit? Like the president, Ahmadinejad, who said back in 2008 he would never stop, and now he's no longer president. We have a new president there in Iran, but he is the spiritual leader, and what he says goes, and he's always said he's not going to stop the program. And so you see it in another article, current news, as of yesterday. Iran would not step back from its nuclear rights. Now, what does this say? This tells us to get ready for war, because this is another instance where the Iranians are sending a message to Israel. And there is no question in my mind that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, understands what is going on here. And this is the prelude to a war. Israel is going to have to do something, because he is not going to stop trying to get his hands on a nuclear weapon that will no doubt be used against Israel. It says Khomeini took swipes at Israel and France during his speech to tens of thousands of volunteer Ba'athi militiamen in Tehran, broadcast live on Iran's press TV. Zionist officials cannot be called human. They are like animals. And some of them, said Khomeini, the Israeli regime is doomed to failure and annihilation. I don't really need to give you any more in this report, because you get the heart of the matter. The connection between Iran and a nation coming against Israel, a nation coming against Jerusalem, like they've said over and over again, and a nation who is destined to be dragged down against Israel in the Ezekiel chapter 38 war. I'm praying that you see this connection, and I'm praying much more than you'll just see it, that you'll believe not what Frank DeMore is telling you, but what God has shown us in his scriptures. So if you see Iran is a hostile enemy and wants to annihilate Israel, and you see God telling you that exact same thing, why wouldn't you believe it? Obviously, it's because Satan wouldn't want you to believe it. Now, I want to bring you another article while I'm connecting the dots for you. And this article will say more or less the same, on the same line that we already read to you. But I just wanted to give you the headline here, and just to show you that we're on the road to seeing these prophecies being fulfilled. Israel says bad Iran deal will bring war. And I have the link there for you, and you'll see that this news is in relation to, again, Ezekiel 38 or the Psalm 83, where war is coming. But let me go on to another article. But before I do that, just let me focus in again on Moscow, because Benjamin Netanyahu has headed to Moscow. We know that Moscow is actually the capital of Russia. Russia is the leader of the Ezekiel chapter 38. And Russia is in bed with who? Their excellent allies. You'll see this in my book, with Iran, with Turkey, with Syria. Let's put it this way, with the enemies that are listed in either the Psalm 83 war or the Ezekiel war. So don't expect anything coming good from Moscow, because Moscow will be just like Barack Hussein Obama. They may say that they want to help Israel, but they too will have a knife trying to destroy or annihilate the nation of Israel. No question about it. We know it from Zechariah 12:3, and we know about it for sure from Ezekiel chapter 38, where Russia will lead that war. All right, so we got this link, and look at the headline here. Netanyahu pledges Iran will not have nukes. Look what it says. Iran must not obtain nuclear weapons, and Israel will not allow it to do so, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared Thursday, speaking to Russian Jewish community leaders in Moscow. They must not have nuclear weapons. And I promise you that they will not have nuclear weapons, Netanyahu declared. Now, as I showed you before, he gave a warning to Iraq, and he gave a warning to Syria. He took out Iraq's nuclear weapons facilities and Syria's, and he will do it again. Get ready for it. It says the Iranians deny our past and repeat their commitment to wipe the state of Israel off the map. I mean, look at what you're seeing here, folks, because this is identical to what we see in Ezekiel chapter 38, where they're trying to wipe Israel out. Reminds us of the dark regimes of the past that plotted against us first and then against all humanity, he said. Now, in other words, I believe he's talking about Adolf Hitler, who Satan was using to try to wipe out all the Jews, thinking Satan's man, Hitler, would be used to annihilate the Jews so that the prophecies that Christ wanted to fulfill for the Jews would end. And of course we know that Hitler died and the Jews are still here because God, Jehovah, is watching over the Jews. He's going to fulfill all the prophecies that are left for the Jews and for the world. Now, as I said in the beginning of my video, that Barack Hussein Obama has stabbed Israel in the back. And I believe so, in part to fulfill Zechariah 12:3. And in many of my posts, I've shown you some of the things that he has done. Now, I want you to take a look at this Bellflower post that came out. You'll see that this came out yesterday as well. Obama turns on Israel. Should it surprise you? Not at all. Not if you believe the word of the Lord. Look at this. Barack Obama's March 2013 trip to Israel had a too good to be true feel about it. And while pressuring on Israel, he instructed the Palestinians not to set preconditions for negotiations and admonished them to recognize that Israel will be a Jewish state. It felt out of character, suggesting a price to be paid later. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Before I go on to the next paragraph, which is really, really important, I'm going to bring you to a word. So make sure that you understand what this word is. And I'm doing this specifically for the youngest generation who may not know what the word is. And I want to make sure that anybody who's at my website understand what this is all about. So look at what the word is.
Acquiescence.
Acquiescence. And what does it mean? Well, when you take a look at the meaning, it says a reluctant acceptance of something without protest. And there's a lot of other meanings. In silence, acquiescence. She rose to her feet. And there's synonyms. Accept. Okay? Consent to. Agree to. Allow. Concede. Assent to. Concur with. In other words, go along with. Very, very important. This word.
Acquiescence.
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 Oh, that's right.
Acquiescence.
Acquiescence. You can hear Barack Obama saying,
Acquiescence.
oh, yeah.
Acquiescence.
Oh, man.
Acquiescence.
Say it, Obama.
Acquiescence.
Oh.
Acquiescence. Acquiescence.
Yeah, you can say it until you get sick of it, right? Well, I'm hoping that if I play it enough, this will stick in your mind. Because what I'm going to take to you now, show you, is really, really critical in your understanding what's happening. Look what this paragraph says in relation to what the United States says. Well, the price has now, 8 months later, been revealed, and it has two components. If I might paraphrase the U.S. position, first, sit by quietly as we reach in accord with Tehran that freezes but does not dismantle its nuclear buildup. All right, so this isn't going to help Israel at all. And it's going to still cause the United States to see Israel have to respond to Iran, or attack them. Now look at this now. Second, stop the illegitimate residential construction on the West Bank, or the Palestinian Authority will, with American acquiescence. Remember what it meant? Accept. That's what it means. The Americans' acquiescence. In other words, go along, accept. Start a third intifada. You know what that means? The United States under Barack Obama is saying that we'll go along with it. Go ahead. Fight against Israel. And my friends, when I read this article, when I read this American acquiescence, my heart dropped. Honest to God. And the reason why it is because I know what Joel the prophet warns about anybody who tries to divide up the land, anybody who comes against Israel, anybody who burdens themselves over Jerusalem. And the land that Israel wants to build on is in East Jerusalem. And here you have The Americans, the leaders, Barack Hussein Obama saying American acquiescence, start a third intifada. If this doesn't make your blood boil, if you're a Christian and a man of God, I don't know what will. And it all leads to fulfillment of Bible prophecy. That's what I'm trying to show people. Israeli responses to the two demands have been stark, blunt, unlike anything in memory. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blasted the prospective Iran deal as a monumental mistake. And after meeting with Secretary of State John Kerry warned, I reminded him that he said no deal is better than a bad deal. And a bad deal is that being discussed in Geneva right now is a bad deal. It's a very bad deal. Iran is not required to take apart even one centrifuge. But the international community is relieving sanctions on Iran for the first time after many years. So instead of getting Iran by the sanctions, they're taking them away. Now, it goes on to say Iran gets everything that it wanted at this stage and pays nothing. And this is when Iran is under severe pressure. I urge Secretary Kerry not to rush to sign, to wait, to reconsider, to get a good deal. But this is a bad deal, a very, very bad deal. It's the deal of a century for Iran. It's very dangerous and bad deal for peace and the international community. So again, who in the United States of America, who knew all the presidents before Barack Hussein Obama, would ever hear or think that they would hear an American president say, and with American acquiescence, start a third intifada? If this isn't a prime example of Zechariah 12:3 coming into fruition, I don't know what is. And if you don't believe it now, I don't know what it will take for you to see the full picture of what is happening between the United States and Israel in injunction, if you will, to the Psalm 83 and Ezekiel chapter 38 prophecies. Now, talking about the relationship, there's another article. Click that link. It brought you over here. Insults fly in the U.S. and Israel showdown. One way to measure just how tense U.S. and Israeli relations have become, look at how prominent proxies from both sides are duking it out in public. By that standard, the friendship is cratering, with supporters and opponents of the White House-backed nuclear deal with Iran rhetorically at one and another's throats. A well-regarded Obama foreign policy surrogate with close White House ties, Colin Kahlil, and the best-known media voice for the pro-Israeli forces in Washington, Josh Block, got into a nasty tweeter tango over the weekend that led bare how caustic the Iran debate has become between the two staunch allies. And they're not staunch allies anymore. Now, I'll let you go to my site and read what they were writing to each other, but you're getting the meat of the heart of the material here, and that is the disintegration between allies that used to be fantastic allies, and they're no allies anymore, obviously. And you're going to see more deterioration between the allies in the near future until Zechariah 12:3 is completely fulfilled. The famous West Side Institutional Synagogue in Manhattan hosted a conference this week by the Samaria Shomron Regional Council. Over 300 people attended the landmark event, including leaders of U.S. Jewish communities and the heads of a major U.S.-Israel organization. During the conference, Samaria Regional Council head Gershon Isaka expressed sharp criticism of the U.S. policy toward Jewish building in Judea and Samaria, as well as U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's inflammatory comments supporting the Palestinian Authority. In every issue, the U.S. administration has chosen to side with the Palestinian Arabs. This is exactly what I've been telling you over and over again ever since I opened up the prophecy site. Goes on to say the Jewish nation returned to its land after 2,000 years of history and exile, and apparently the U.S. has forgotten its obligations to Israel. And a lot of people who read this article, I'm sure they would say, we don't owe Israel anything. And all I could say to this would be this. You may not think that you owe anything to Israel, but because God, Jehovah God of the Old Testament, Jesus Christ of the New Testament, has chosen the nation of Israel to show that He is God, to bring us the salvation that we have now in Jesus Christ. And if He tells us to be friends with Israel and to support it and to bless Israel, and He'll bless you, and likewise the reverse to it, you will be cursed if you don't. Anyone who curses Israel will be cursed. So in this context, for the United States of America, it's bad news. And the United States, under this administration, has definitely either forgotten on purpose the obligation to Israel. The obligation that I'm talking about is be faithful to God and believe in His word in supporting the nation of Israel. It's up to each and every individual to make a decision whether they believe the word of the Lord, believe God, or to move away from it. And if you move away from God, all you're doing is moving that much closer to Satan and what he wants you to believe. All right, so now I'm at another link here. You'll see it Thursday, November the 21st, 2013. So let me scroll down. It says, in response to mortar fire, the IAF, this would be the Israeli Air Force, hits Gaza terrorist sites. After Palestinian terrorists fired mortars at Israel Defense Forces, troops on Israel's Gaza border, the IAF, which is the Israeli Air Force, targets 4 terror infrastructure sites in Gaza. Of course, this is where the Palestinians are, and if you read Psalm 83, you'll see that these people, the Palestinians in the Gaza, are mentioned in that Psalm 83 war. And if you do Google search on Frank Demora, and the Palestinians will not stop sending mortars, rockets into Israel, you'll see all of my warnings there. Those warnings are also coming to fruition. Why? Because I'm some kind of prophet? Not at all. It's because I know the constitution of the Palestinian people, and that constitution has never been changed. It says the annihilation of the nation of Israel. And this is why I've been saying, I don't care. If they say that they're going to stop sending the rockets and these mortars, don't believe them, because they're lying to you. And of course, they're doing this at a time when we're supposed to think that they're going to sit down and have peace talks with Israel. We're not going to have any peace. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. Sudden destruction will come. When? When they're calling for peace and safety. It says also on Tuesday, 2 IDF officers hurt in incident during a controlled explosion in northern Israel. So we definitely see these problems arising with these mortar fires or these missiles. It will continue to get bad until one of these days, and I keep saying this, one of these events are going to launch a war, and no doubt in my mind that will be the Psalm 83 war. So in closing this section today, take the challenge. Come to my website. You'll see right below my book. You'll see the link. November the 19th. I just updated it again for you. All the latest information in there. Click the link. Download the book. And be blessed by a free gift that I'm giving to you today. How many people will give you their life's work for free? I do it because I love the Lord. I do it because I want to see you in the arms of the Lord and in the home of the Lord in heaven. God help anyone who rejects Jesus Christ as the Messiah of this world. This is Frank Demora. My love goes out to all of you. God bless.